Let's talk to Rajeev Peshawaria, who's the CEO of Stewardship Asia Centre here in Singapore, which is a non-profit which tries to advise and educate leaders in how they should be thinking about future issues in the context of stewardship rather than profit making, right? Am I summarizing your work correctly?
Yes, very much.
Okay, so the question here being, in the context of this, even though we're seeing all these companies pledging ESG commitments, do you think that company leaders are really acting as stewards? Do you think they're really conscious of the threat that is coming to them from things like litigation and, as we saw in the Shell AGM a couple of days ago, just direct action?
And people barging in on stage even, which became a security risk for the executives and a lot of people, yes. So a couple of things, Teymoor. Are they responding to the threats? Absolutely. But there's two kinds of people that we see in the corporate world today. Those who are seeing current existential challenges like climate change and socioeconomic inequality as threats, and those that are seeing that as an opportunity. So the ones that are seeing it as a threat tend to window dress a little bit. Let me do a little bit. Let me look good because everybody's talking about ESG, and if I don't, be seen as doing
greenwashing, as they call it.
Greenwashing, I'm not even talking about. That's the far left. But those who are doing something, responding to the threat, either are window dressing or are box checking. I'll do exactly what the law says and no more, so I stay out of trouble. Now, those who are seeing existential challenges as an opportunity, they take a more proactive leadership stance. They see themselves as stewards of planet Earth and humanity. And we see lots of examples around the world of that. And what they're saying is we accept the 21st century leadership challenge, which is to drive superior shareholder returns by addressing the very challenges that are threatening us today.
And this is one of the questions actually that is constantly out there, is are those superior returns real? Because a lot of people doubt that taking this kind of stewardship approach is viable when the shareholder primacy argument is always at the front of mind.
So the jury is still out. Okay. However, there's plenty of evidence. McKinsey did a meta-analysis of 2,200 studies that tried to look for a positive correlation between ESG focus and financial performance, and 63% of them showed a positive return. Only 8% showed a negative return. All right. So the question is are you 100% going to succeed by taking a steward leadership approach? No. The question is, what do you need to do to be in the 63%? And we've done a lot of research on that.
But if you break it down, how much is the focus on E versus S versus G? Because I think a lot of, crossing the line is on S and G, not necessarily on the E aspect of.
So I have a slightly different view on that. Okay. You see, let's put ESG in perspective first. E and S are existential challenges that we must address. And there's widespread understanding that we must address them, otherwise there'll be no planet left for our children. G is kind of the mechanism with which we address them, right? So E, S, and G together is kind of an odd grouping in the first place. Now, which one is the more focus? With the obsession of measurement, with the obsession with measurement that the whole world is with, and then reporting, which regulators want you to do, bulk of the focus is on the E, because E, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, etc., can be measured and reported on. S actually is difficult to measure, so people focus less on the S. G, again, you can measure the activities.
But I thought investors would be more punishing on G because that's immediate, right? That's easy to pick.
That's right, because you can see what they're doing and what they're not doing as part of the G activities, right? But here's the problem. We looked
at... For example, Tesla, right? A large part of the whole Tesla, the stock being weighed down and the worries around Tesla are to do with governance issues.
Absolutely. Now, you got to get governance right, don't get me wrong. But here's what we did. We looked at boards all across Asia, and we asked board directors, how do you spend your time? It turns out that 60 to 65% of board time is spent on three activities. Regulatory compliance, risk management, and financial incentive management. Now, if you're going to address environmental and societal challenges, existential challenges, is regulation going to do it? No, because you cannot legislate innovation. Innovation at the highest level is needed to solve for climate change, to solve for socio-economic inequality, and steward leaders accept that challenge.
And regulation is still building the framework around it, right?
Yes, we need regulation, We need regulation to make sure that we minimize harm, no further harm. So everybody, don't do this, otherwise you will go to jail. But to solve for it, minimizing harm doesn't mean that you're going to reverse climate change.
Speak to the level of current regulation. You talked a moment ago about how companies are just ticking boxes to comply with the existing regulation. But the question is, are the existing regulations adequate? Are they going to change things in terms of reversing climate change or reversing socioeconomic inequality? And also, if they're not, then are we going to see changes in regulations that are going to just exacerbate all the things we've just been talking about?
The short answer is no. Because we do need regulation, don't get me wrong. Regulation, as I said just now, needs to be in place to minimize harm. If you do less than this, you will go to jail. So we need people to do that. The 80-20 rule says that 20% of the people will create 80% of the change. So we looked at companies around the world that are doing well by doing good, that are actually placing sustainability, environmental and social sustainability at the core of business strategy. Why are they doing it? They're not doing it because of regulation. They're not doing it because of incentives. They're not doing it because of cheaper capital. They're doing it because of a steward leadership stance. They believe in values of interdependence, that if the more I help society, the more my shareholder is going to gain in the long term. So they are doing it because of that, because they want to.
I would love to believe that's true, Rajeev, and I'm sure to a certain extent in your environment it is, but how widespread is it? I mean, here in Singapore, you've got the Stewardship Centre. I'm not seeing similar entities elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, and the other question, the other pushback that I always get is, all this is good, Rajeev, but how can we convince everybody to be good stewards and be steward leaders? The good news is you don't have to convince everybody. And not everybody will do it. The majority will not do it. But if Wilfredo Pareto was right in 1906, all we need is 20% of the people to believe in this and take the challenge and drive innovation needed. And then 80% of the effects will be because of 20% of the causes. And that 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle has not been debunked over 100 years.
Are we seeing the 20%?
Absolutely, we are. We have a new book coming out later in which we
globally? In Asia or globally? Globally.
Globally.
20%. Okay.
Globally. Well, whether the number is exactly 20% or 15%.
No, but I get your drift, yeah.
But the idea is Wilfredo Pareto has not been debunked. So we need to convince 2 out of 10 corporate bosses to become steward leaders.
And you've written a book on this, you say?
That's right. Coming out in November. It's called Sustainable Sustainability, and in which we are arguing that ESG must be upgraded to ESL, where L stands for steward leadership.
Okay, excellent. Just one last question. Sure. How do you put AI in the mix? Because AI evangelists are going to say, you know, we are pro ESG. We just override the whole concern around ESG, because obviously it's all about technology then, right?
So again, one of the 3 big existential challenges we see today, which businesses need to take ownership of, are climate change, socioeconomic inequality, and cyber vulnerability. Notice I said cyber vulnerability and not security. And you've got to be responsible. I don't think that AI is going to be the end of humanity at all. I think technology has always been a double-edged sword, and over time, technology has every turn of technology.
But can companies rely on AI to dilute to improve their ESG score?
If they use it the wrong way, yes. The whole idea is to use technology and AI in a way that actually creates long-term value, in a responsible way. And if they do that, there's no problem. Okay. But you know, that's what the greenwashers do. They do the opposite. They try to look good when there's actually nothing behind it. Depends on what the leadership intent is, which comes back to, do I believe in stewardship or not? Indeed. It's a choice.
It's a choice, yeah. Right now, I'm more worried about the job cuts that all of this is creating. But thanks very much, Rajeev, for joining us and giving us your take on climate change and the overall approach towards ESG by corporates around the world.